Hey, on this episode of Successfully Live, Aparna talks about her experience rolling out an NPS program and how there's much more than just a number. She discusses why in-product messaging is not enough, how to capture feedback from the entire user experience, and how she uses Slack to involve the entire team. If you're out there looking for a job or looking for someone to hire in customer success, you've got to check out the newly launched Success Jobs by our friends at Success Hacker. They're working to make Success Jobs the premier destination for your customer success-focused job search. You can find out more at successjobs.co.
Everyone in the company gets to see that score, gets to see the follow-up question, response to the follow-up question. So it became actionable right there. Like engineering leaders, product leaders, even like just engineers, individual contributors on engineering teams started taking interest because they were like, oh, this user took the survey on this page. What about this page wasn't working?
Welcome to another episode of Successfully Live. We go and meet with customer success leaders in Silicon Valley and talk about the tactical things that they're actually doing to impact churn and increase usage. I'm your host, Adam O'Donnell, the co-founder of Successly. Today I'm excited to be here with Aparna Vemuri. Could you first just describe your role?
I lead all post-sales technical offerings at Kahuna, right from initial technical integration, onboarding, implementation, as well as providing ongoing technical support. Underlying the technical services, there's like three basic pillars, right? Like I mentioned, there's the first implementations and ongoing piece, and then there's the ongoing technical support piece. And then the final piece, we're a machine learning data-driven company. So we also have a data analyst on my team who helps drive some of those data decisions.
Today we're talking about NPS programs. Everyone we've talked to has one. I want to first start with why? Why did you really think that was important to use the time?
About a year and a half ago, as we started maturing as a customer success organization, as our customer base grew, we wanted to get an understanding and provide like a formal feedback loop for our customers to tell us how we were doing, both in terms of the product, the services that we offer, the experience that they have with Kahuna, everything.
What was the very first thing you did?
To think about what we want to ask and how. It's an opportunity, like I mentioned, for us to collect feedback. So beyond the standard of how likely are you to recommend Kahuna question, we wanted to get more qualitative information because, as you know, and you probably agree, NPS just beyond being a number, it doesn't mean anything if you don't have the qualitative data to back it up, right? So we wanted to understand really what does a 9 mean? Why are we getting a 9 versus why are we getting a 0? And what does it mean to get a 9 from what type of a customer? So we wanted to understand the customer profile. We wanted to understand the why behind the scores. And then since the first time we were rolling the survey out, we also wanted to get some sort of an understanding of the entire life cycle. So understanding what the sales process looks like and what the experience during the sales process looks like, post-sales implementation and onboarding, what does the experience look like? And throughout the journey, they're mapping out that journey and asking questions about critical handoff points to see what the experience looked like from a customer perspective.
How many other questions did you ask?
Built out multiple pathways depending on what kind of persona our users had, like the technical persona, business buyer persona, day-to-day user persona, and then like typical data analyst kind of persons. So we sort of segmented our customers. We asked the core question, and then we asked a couple of follow-up questions on ease of use and that sort of thing. And then after that, we bifurcated the question, saying if you're a business buyer, we wanted to ask you about our sales process. We wanted to ask you about the value. And then if it's a more technical user, we wanted to ask, was it hard to integrate the SDK? Did you find our documentation easy? How did you feel about our support? How did you feel about our integration services and so on? So we put them through swim lanes, each user through specific swim lanes to get that entire user experience.
Did you put those swim lanes together during the survey, meaning once they filled out and said, I am a business buyer, then it automatically goes to the next one? Or did you? Yeah. So you didn't do it beforehand? You didn't say, I'm going to segment it out?
So we started out with the core NPS question, how likely are you to recommend Kahuna to a friend or a coworker? After that, depending on the response, we said, okay, why a 9 versus why a 0? Or what can we do to get from a 7 to a 10? So those were the first 3 swim lanes. And after that, we asked about their day-to-day usage. How are you using Kahuna? Then started putting them through the swim lanes.
My first thought is you've got to have had lower response rates.
I don't know if it's a lower response rate because we didn't have any benchmarks at that time. It was our first time rolling it out, but it was less than what I expected. That was a huge lesson because we knew we weren't targeting high response rate, but we were looking more for the qualitative data. Why is a 9 a 9? Why did you give us a 9? What are the factors driving that 9? And how can we correlate that back with the rest of the customer journey and say, here's why we got the 9. A 9 makes sense in this context versus a 0 makes sense in this context. The next quarter, we ran the survey. We didn't include all of these questions about the entire life cycle because at that point we had some understanding of the life cycle and how the customers feel, both from the NPS data itself and our day-to-day interactions, customer success interactions with all of our users. So the next time we ran it, we reduced the questions purely to an NPS question, ease of use, and then NPS follow-up on the why. Why did you give us the score you gave us? Or what can we do? What's the one thing that we can do to get from a 7 to a 10? Sort of just that one follow-up question.
Could you tell us what technology you're using to do this?
First started the survey, we used a product called Get Feedback. To build out that whole large survey. And then the second quarter, we trimmed it down to just the NPS and follow-up questions. In the third iteration, we wanted to see what the feedback would look like when we ask NPS questions within the product. When someone's in the product, engaging with your product, asking that pop-up NPS question. So we integrated with another product called Vutric. We started showing this survey in product. Again, that was just two questions, NPS and follow-up, nothing else. Because when they're in the product engaging and doing something, you don't want to interrupt their workflow and say, hey, by the way, take my big, long survey. We got a lot of good data from that in terms of the NPS scores. But I think we did some amount of A/B testing, actually A, B, C, D testing. We played around with the follow-up question language a little bit. But it was actually pretty neat for everything else, except we weren't getting a lot of qualitative information. I say it's pretty neat because we had this going for 2 quarters, Q3 and Q4 of last year. And the way we had set it up was if you are a user who logs in, 30 days after your first login, we pop up a survey and ask you what you think about the product and if you would recommend to a friend or a coworker. And your score is posted on our internal Slack real time. So everyone in the company gets to see that score, gets to see the follow-up question, response to the follow-up question. So it became actionable right there. Like engineering leaders, product leaders, even just engineers, individual contributors on engineering teams started taking interest because they were like, oh, this user took the survey on this page. What about this page wasn't working? Or this is awesome. They love this page. Or I'm so excited that this user gave us a 10. So it became very personal for everyone. Everyone started taking interest in our NPS program at that point.
I want to dive into this Slack thing.
Yeah.
So you're basically, are you doing this through the technology that you're using to send it out?
Yeah, it's called Vutric, Wootric. So they have a fairly simple Slack integration as well. So you take the survey, it posts on your internal Slack. So that gave organization-wide visibility into customer feedback. Everyone had first-hand access to customer feedback, so that was amazing. But the thing is, we were only reaching users who were in product, who were using and engaging with product. And as you know, for example, our technical users, they don't go into the product. They just use our APIs. They just use whatever their own tools to write code and integrate with our APIs. Or our business users, they're just looking at the results the day-to-day user puts together out of Kahuna and looking at those results or interacting with the CSMs on a more business objective kind of conversation. So they weren't in the product as much, so we couldn't reach them as often as we would have liked to reach them. So those were the 2 reasons we then switched back to doing the quarterly email surveys.
What does this look like ongoing, and what are you currently doing now?
So our quarterly right now, like I mentioned, we switched back to the quarterly email survey, short 5-question survey on what is your experience. And so again, our goal this time was to address the response rates and also get more qualitative feedback. Right? As you can see, we first wanted to get the entire lifecycle experience, then we wanted to optimize for the response rate, and now we want to optimize for response rate and the qualitative feedback that we get. So the way we do it is we ask the core NPS question, would you recommend Kahuna to a friend or coworker? Depending on the response, if it's a yes, we provide swim lane options instead of leaving it open-ended. Previously, we were leaving it open-ended saying, oh, that's great. Why a 10? Can you give us more context on the 10? Or when we got a 0, we actually tried to be humorous. We used a funny tone and all of that. But what we did in our latest iteration is that we put you through swim lanes saying, is it because of our core product differentiators? Is it because of our services that we offer? Or is it something else? And then we provide an open-ended box where they can provide comments. We found that we get more responses, better response rate based on your feedback of 10. Are these the reasons, or is there like an open-ended question on other reason? So we're leaving room for that, but most people, as you would, most survey takers, at least personally, I'd like to click buttons than to type something out. It was much easier for us to get that qualitative follow-up feedback on why 10 or why 0 or why 8.
Are you responding to people who give qualitative responses?
We reach out to them one-on-one via email and thank them for taking the survey and offer them a follow-up feedback session. So depending on the actual qualitative response they gave, if it's a positive promoter score saying, I love your product because of its core differentiators, we're setting ourselves up for a perfect case study reference or whatnot with customer advocacy kind of situation, right? So we start working towards that, developing the account for customer advocacy, working with our marketing team and so on. On the other hand, if it's a detractor score specifically citing the integration was super hard or I couldn't get through technical challenges or whatnot, that's an area we take that feedback back into engineering. Our engineering leadership is super involved in the whole customer-facing aspect of our business as well. So we take that feedback back to engineering leadership, brainstorm on what can we do to make the developer experience easier with Kahuna, like what are the low-hanging fruit that we can get out of the way so that developers don't feel blocked when they're using our product.
What is the timeline of how quickly you get back to someone who gave that qualitative? Because I imagine that there's just, oh man, here goes another thing that we've got to be able to respond to within a minute or two or within a day, and we're already so busy.
So we made a bunch of easy to follow playbook templates, but even with emails, right? So promoter with this channel, here's the sort of feedback follow-up that we want to do. We brainstormed and as a team put that together so that it became easy. And we had specific owners. The VP of customer success would reach out to a certain profile of users, executive taking the survey and providing a certain type of feedback. I took point on engineers or technical users providing a certain type of feedback. And so that sort of distribution of that task helped us a lot in getting back to customers. So internally, we set ourselves a target to get back to everyone who provided a feedback. We wanted to reach out via email within 24 to 48 hours.
Do you have any learning lessons there or any challenges that you could give pointers on, or did that work pretty well?
Getting someone to respond to an NPS survey, clicking on buttons is a lower threshold versus having someone schedule a 1-hour call to do more the qualitative user research kind of follow-ups is slightly harder. But our design team has taken point on that, and it's not completely related to our NPS program, but that's something that another initiative that we built out independent of our NPS program at Kahuna, and our full credit to our design team there.
Did you do anything to aggregate it together?
So I aggregate the feedback on a quarterly basis, and I present it company-wide, so everyone in the company has that day-to-day responses kind of view, as well as the overall program level view of how the program's progressing, how many responses are we getting, what kind of feedback are we receiving, and what are we doing with that feedback, and how are we acting, and what are some of the successes based on our actions that we took. What the numbers itself, like we sent out to X number of people, Y number of people took the survey. Here's what the survey responses look like. Here's the qualitative feedback we got in terms of just bucketing them into categories and saying, here's the type of qualitative feedback we received and here's how we're acting on it. Here are the things that we completed, some of the initiatives that we completed based on past feedback. Here are the results that they're yielding. Here's what the next steps look like.
Is there anything you can tell us on how you've come up with like a way to follow up on stuff that takes more than just a week or two to do?
So I agree totally with you that there are some things, if it's a large product initiative or a large services initiative, that's not something that we could roll out in a week or two. while being thoughtful, of course, right? But we certainly take action items on two things. One, figuring out what's driving that business need, making sure the product team is connected to that business need. They understand the business need. And then the second thing as customer success organization is we take point on providing timelines for how that is going to roll out. As opposed to saying, we'll get back to you, I think it's much more effective when you say, we'll get back to you at the end of this month or at the end of this quarter, or it's on our roadmap. We're going to give you an estimate of when it's going to get on our roadmap on Monday, providing some sort of a timeline for the next steps.
How are you holding your team accountable for actually getting back to those people?
We track weekly sync notes, and then internally we have bi-weekly syncs with product and engineering stakeholders where customer success has an opportunity to voice customer requests and feedback.
Is there one piece of advice that you could give someone who's about to start a new NPS program?
You were asking me a lot about why we had the program in place. I think really figuring out why you need that feedback and how you intend to act on that feedback. Because it's not just important to ask your customers how they feel about it, unless you can prove that you're internalizing that feedback, driving internal actions to act on that feedback. That's when it becomes meaningful, and helps you develop that trusted relationship with your customers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam.
Seriously,
Thanks so much. This
so
is
much
fun.
Another great episode of Successfully Live.